I'm curious, as we're seeing people still kind of experiment and build out these multi-agent systems, why did you take a multi-agent approach?
We built this multi-agent workflow because we know that in order to do an exploitation, you need to have several different of tasks.
We knew that we're going to get really good result. We didn't know it's going to be that good. I think that this was the moment that we understand, okay, something big happens here, and we need to communicate it to practitioners.
I think that the problem AI amplifies is squared because it also helps the attackers by increasing the velocity of exploitation, but it also expands the attacking surface because there is so much code written by AI right now.
I want to be clear about it. The only reasonable thing to do for every average attacking group around the world is to exploit CVEs the moment that they're coming out and then spray the internet.
What did you build exactly? What did you set out to build?
I think everybody feels that some kind of earthquake in this era.
Thank you for joining Resilient Cyber Show. My name is Chris Hughes, and today I'm joined by Niamh and Yair. Thanks for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, you guys quickly popped up on my radar, and I suspect the radar of many other folks this week when you started sharing what you call Moak, or Mother of All Kevs, I think it stands for. But for folks that don't know you guys, don't know your background and so on, do you mind telling us a bit about yourself before we dive into that?
Yeah, for sure. So we are Yair and Niamh, currently in Tel Aviv. So good night from Tel Aviv. Actually, it's pretty late here. We launched our company not so long ago. We're backed by Sequoia and some other great folks. We've known each other for a long time. Both have an history about a decade in A200, each of us. We've been friends for 9 years now. We sat back to back in the old offices, and we worked together in any construction you can imagine. We launched our own company not so long ago. We already have about 20 employees, and we have a lot of visions about what changed in the cyber world, related to AI, both in the side of the attackers and the side of the defenders. So we're trying to give our own perspective and help fix real problems.
That's awesome. How about you, Niamh?
Also around the experience of a decade in the cyber world in A200. Met this guy in 2017. Very excited to launch our new company. I'm also very proud of the research of Moak, we'll tell about in a moment, and very passionate about everything in the intersection of cybersecurity and AI, which has been a very hot topic in the recent weeks.
Yeah, hot topic to put it lightly, for sure. So, you guys built Moak, as it's called. It describes itself as the first agentic AI workflow to exploit hundreds of dangerous vulnerabilities in minutes. I'm curious, can you walk us through, what did you actually build here? It looks like a multi-agent architecture. You have a collector, a researcher, builder, exploiter, judge. What did you build exactly? What did you set out to build? And what was the moment you realized that this was possible and necessary to demonstrate it, publicly?
I think everybody feels that some kind of earthquake in this era, and we launched Moak in the same week of Mythos, but we had this idea for a long time. It was weird for us that some of the big labs claiming that those models aren't really good at cyber capabilities because vulnerability researchers field of its own, but exploiting vulnerabilities, it's basically engineering with a feedback loop. So if there was, they're trying to create a circle, there's a circle for engineering and a circle for cyber, but it's not quite the case because many things in cyber are a layer above engineering. So if the model is really good at engineering, of course it's going to be really good at exploitation. It just made sense for us. And we share this idea with a lot of practitioners, and many related, but I think some were lacking imagination. There wasn't quite a benchmark about how those new AI attackers works. And we managed to exploit React to Shell 21 minutes after we tried to work on this exploit. Like the Moak managed to do it by its own without human in the loop in 21 minutes. And we knew that we're going to get a really good result. We didn't know it's going to be that good. So I think that this was the moment that we understand, okay, something big happens here, and we need to communicate it to practitioners, because no practitioner thought it's going to, that the AI enables that. Like practitioners thought, okay, maybe it's going to be half a day, maybe it's going to be days. FedRAMP was the guiding I felt. A lot of practitioners think, okay, it's going to be able to exploit in a day or so. The incentive to build Moak was to create this benchmark so we can talk with every practitioner and say, this is the new kind of threat you're facing.
How about you, Niv? Anything to add on there?
Sure. So we decided to build this workflow, and we had in mind a couple of conditions. We wanted to build a workflow that manages to exploit the most dangerous vulnerabilities out there. That's why we chose the specific catalog of KEVs, the known exploited vulnerabilities, which is only a small fraction of all of the CVEs in the world. These are the CVEs that were actually used in order to breach organizations out there. So we decided to take this exclusive catalog, and we wanted to exploit them and any vulnerability the moment they are dropped. And we wanted to do that autonomously and to do it as fast as possible. We aimed to do that in an hour. We managed to do most of them in less than an hour. So what we did is to build this agentic workflow, which is composed of 5 different agents. Each has a specific role in the exploitation process, and the only input it needs is just the CV number. That's it. No more knowledge needed, and the outcome of it is a working and validated exploitation script. We don't share it, we only keep it to ourselves, but that was the part of the demonstration that we did, and we also present the exploitation evidence on the live dashboard in the website. In general, the 5-agent workflow work as follow. There is the first agent, which is the collector. This is the only agent which is online. It's the only agent that is responsible on downloading the information needed for the exploitation. It only uses the CV description that is published, and it downloads the code of the vulnerable and patched version of the applications. It doesn't download any POCs from online or any more information that would help the exploitation. And this is ingested into the researcher, which is the mind map of the whole, the mastermind of the whole workflow. It builds a mind map of primitives and leads, work together in some sort of graph in order to create new leads and new primitives, until it manages to create a full exploit chain, because usually complex exploitation are composed of several exploitation primitives, some of them 5 or even 10 primitives together. So the researcher finds in the end this chain. It's kind of a recipe, still theoretical, of the exploitation, and then it passes to the workers. The 2 workers are the builder and the exploiter. The builder builds an environment so we can check the exploit on, and the exploiter, it actually builds the exploitation program, trying it against the environment that we build until it manages to prove it managed to exploit. The builder hides a secret flag inside the application, so that's how we know when the exploiter managed to actually exploit the environment. And that's how the full workflow works. That's exactly like we said before. This is basically engineering with a feedback loop. That's how we actually managed to do that, and the workflow is fully autonomous until we get the full exploiting script and evidence in the end.
Yeah, I had a question. So you took this multi-agent approach. I'm curious, why that, like, as we're seeing people still kind of experiment and build out these multi-agent systems, why did you take a multi-agent approach and kind of break it out, the functionality that way? And then 2, like in the context of demonstrating exploitation, How do you think this transfers or applies to like a customer or enterprise environment, knowing that every enterprise is slightly different in terms of how deployments look and configurations and so on? Like, how do you think about that in terms of the transfer from what you demonstrate to like an enterprise context?
So for the first question, we build this multi-agent workflow because we know that in order to do an exploitation, you need to have several different of tasks. And by splitting the agent into this workflow, it manages us to control how the workflow process will work like, but still remain the creativity of each sub-agent by its own. We did give instructions for each sub-agent in exactly how to do its part, but we still give it the freedom of an agent to use its creativity and chain of knowledge in order to perform its tasks. And this was like actually the trade-off to remain the creativity, but still have some harnesses on how the exploitation workflow should look like. And we did not focus on reachability. Many tools focus on reachability that is specific to environments, but we wanted to put a spotlight on the exploitability part that currently is usually unaddressed. So we built an environment that is the most normal environment for each vulnerability of the vulnerable application, and we managed to exploit it. Usually we didn't do ourselves easy tasks, like we did the most secured environment, the most hardened environment possible, that if we manage to exploit it, then probably every reachable environment will also be exploitable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think some folks were wondering, how you were thinking about that. So I wanted to ask you as well. A big piece of this is like the central thesis of the collapse of the time to exploit, right? Going from discovery to exploitation used to be not even long ago, several years ago, but like 771 days. Now it's literally minutes. What you have created with Moak is kind of a proof of that compression happening. A lot of organizations, like you mentioned, FedRAMP and some of these other things that drive remediation patch cycles and so on, operate on 30 days, 7 days, 14 days, those kind of things based on criticality and other factors. Like, what should enterprises be, like thinking from the enterprise perspective, like what should they be doing differently today? Like knowing that we're seeing this compression of exploitation, like is there any realistic path, for defenders to keep up, catch up, still have a chance? Like, how do you guys think about that?
I think that first they need to acknowledge the threat. This is important. In our perspective, the only reasonable thing for a lot of attacking groups out there to do is to create Moak. Like to create people, they're like, imagine, somebody, you write prompts, hey, please exploit this CV. Okay, of course, this is a naive way to think. It's the models aren't there yet. But creating this kind of workflow, this is possible. This is what we try to claim here. And be sure that a lot of attacking groups are already doing it, like I'm guessing, and that it's not only nation-state attackers, because the models like unlock these capabilities for average groups around the world. So, and this is important because this is the new threat. The new threat is spray and pray of 1 days. Like this is what the only reasonable thing to do for every average attacking groups around, I want to be clear about it. The only reasonable thing to do for every average attacking group around the world is to exploit CVEs the moment that they're coming out and then spray the internet. So first, I think enterprises should understand that. Beyond that, I say this is a big problem. Like you have two processes enterprises should enable, but this is a big problem. Like I don't have like the correct answer for how enterprises should solve it. They need to make a plan, but the plan should be around two things. First, prevention, and second, perfecting the remediation processes. Prevention, of course, is creating the architecture that enables remediation in minutes or seconds. Most of the enterprises still have long CI/CDs. Most of the enterprises doesn't have this secure by default products they can just plug and play and use. So this is like the first kind of solutions. I would say, maintain secure by default mentality. And the second one is perfecting your remediation game. And this is so important. We're talking to enterprises and ask them, okay, what is your MTTR? And they say, oh, we don't know for sure. Well, you should know for sure. Well, you should know for sure. And okay, what's your MTTR? What's your MTTR in React to Shell? React to Shell was exactly a week after Black Friday. What would you do if React to Shell was on Black Friday? This is a big question. So there isn't a simple answer here. I don't think that the answer is like, okay, you should patch in runtime. I think that the complex answer is you need to look at your remediation processes and you need to understand how you perfect them.
Yeah, there's no silver bullet here. It's basically a complex answer and a lot of different, people, process, and technology that's involved, right, to address this. And you mentioned this earlier, but you guys published this. I don't know if it was intentional or not. Maybe just happenstance. But the same week that Anthropic dropped Claude Mythos, right, preview, and it was able to autonomously identify zero-day vulnerabilities. Construct working exploits across every major operating system and browser, as they say, and it kind of came about not from explicit offensive training, but a consequence of general improvements in code, reasoning, autonomy, those kind of things. When you all saw Mythos, come about, did it surprise you? Did it confirm kind of what you already knew and were seeing based on Moak, or what was your reaction to this? And also the industries, the sky is falling, Vuln-apocalypse, Bugmageddon, whatever the phrase you want to use. Like, what were your guys' reactions?
So of course, Anthropic is shaking the world right now, and every time my jaw dropped, like every launch of Anthropic, like both me and Hoffman were peeled, and we are see how Anthropic like literally changes the market. I tell you what made me excited, and I want to share like my point of view here. What excited me most about Mythos was the Glasswing project. Like Anthropic partners with big maintainers out there. This is a big thing. Like Anthropic partnering with Mozilla, partnering with the Linux Foundation. Those are big things. Now, I will try to claim this claim. I think that they're going to be hard 2 years in the cyber community. Going to be like very aggressive, very high velocity attackers, because they're going to be published a lot of CVs probably, right? If you can learn the lesson from the Mozilla thing, Anthropic finding 17 UCVs in Mozilla, or some other examples, we can only expect any maintainer out there that's going to partner with Anthropic going to find the same. And it's going to be products that everybody uses. So there's going to be, it's like a rain of meteors for the every day in the next 2 years in that aspect. The second thing is that maybe after the 2 years will pass, maybe we'll see much less CVs out there. What fascinates me the most is that Anthropic kind of took the most shift left approach out there. They say, okay, fix it in the maintainer. It's not like fix it in your open source provider or something. No, fix it in the literal source. And I actually think this is a bad news for a lot of AppSec companies out there. I think this is a bad news for a lot of, it's been a crazy month in like supply chain security field. But I think that I try to claim the claim that in 2 years from now, maybe 3 years from now, Anthropic will make the world be less about vulnerabilities and more about malwares. And I actually admire them for it. I think it's pretty great. But
I'd be curious to see if you're right. I guess we got to give it 12, 24 months, right, to see if it plays out. I think that there's that potential. But at the same time, like while they're fixing and addressing many of these things, these CVEs and, legacy technical debt, things like that, maybe a question for Neve here is like, there's also the AI generated code problem and like the compounding attack surface. I published an article this week, like GitHub hit 1 billion commits in 2025. and they're on pace to hit 14 billion commits in 2026. So, 14x from 1 billion to 14 billion in 1 year. And that's just GitHub. That's not GitLab, Bitbucket, Entire, right? The new platform that, former GitHub CEO just launched. Like, that's just that platform. So like AI is on one hand, it's like simultaneously automating exploitation and also generating code that's going to contribute to the attack surface. I'm curious, like as you look at that, like with AI coding assistants now writing the majority of enterprise code at some shops and many places, and kind of growing in adoption and usage, like it's an exponentially expanding attack surface too that no human can necessarily like realistically track, just from humans alone, right? We're gonna have to use AI to secure as well. How do you think about that?
It's a great question. I think that the problem AI amplifies is squared because it also helps the attackers by increasing the velocity of exploitation, but it also expands the attacking surface because there is so much code written by AI right now. And I do hope that the new models, for example, Claude Cyber, will make the code more secure, the first-party code more secure. Some kind of a built-in SAST tool for every AI-generated code, but still there are lots of dependencies that the AI-generated code is using, much more dependencies than ever. There's like an exponential growth of amount of open source components used in applications. And as Yair said, there will be 2 difficult years, and currently it's more clear how Glasswing is helping the big companies, the big foundations of the open source, but it's not very clear how Glasswing is going to help all of the other enterprises. And I think currently in the next 2 years, probably enterprises are kind of on their own right now, and the whole remediation game, which needs to be leveled up. In my perspective, it's not about a new shiny tool, it's about acknowledging the problem, and it's about understanding that this is all about team play between the CISO and the CTO, security and engineering. In order to manage to perfect the remediation game, they need to work together. Like after we published Moak, there have been many CISOs coming to us and telling us, guys, like thank you for this smoking gun, because now I can show it to my CTO so he can finally acknowledge this is top priority, that we need to work together to solve that. And we really hope that the awareness to this problem will raise, and people won't rely on Glasswing or Anthropic to solve all the problems, because this is for sure the top priority for 2026 to many enterprises now.
Yeah, I think it got a lot of folks' attention, and I want to ask you all about that because, like Project Glasswing, right, Mythos preview, they rolled it out to, I think it was a handpicked group of 40 organizations, right, initially, and I think it's grown since then, right, but, because of concerns of potential misuse. But Moak is, like, publicly accessible, if I'm not mistaken, like, how do you think about gating like the most powerful quote unquote defensive tooling behind like exclusive programs, while these offensive tools that, like Moak and these tools that can quickly generate exploits are kind of out there in the public? Like, how do you think about the idea of releasing something like this, like the ethical kind of side of that? On one hand, it could drive attention and security spend and, prioritization, but others can say, well, look, why are you giving this away? Like, people can use it nefariously and things like that.
So we haven't released not the specific agents we made, like not the code, and we haven't released any exploit. We're very concerned at that matter. Like we know that this is a very powerful tool. As far as we know, this is the most powerful tool that is there online. There were many auto exploiters online before, but none of them was on this level. But to your point, I think that the model out there, the models that are available, they're capable to doing it. That's what Moak proved. Like you just need to create the workflow exactly right. So I think this is the thing. Like attackers leverage the public models. Maintainers and maybe big cyber companies going to leverage the Mythos. They're going to leverage the private models, and I think it's a shame that we don't see any structured plan about how enterprises can leverage maybe private, maybe public models as well.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious. Like maybe last question for you guys. Like you mentioned that you've got a company you recently founded. You didn't give much of your background, but I think folks can kind of draw conclusions on what you've done in your past life. But what is the goal with the company? The focus. The what are you guys trying to pursue? What do you hope to accomplish? Like where are you going from here?
We're looking at this problem. Like we're facing this problem, and we think this is a big problem. We created the right team to tackle this problem. And sorry for being stealthy, and we don't want to get into specifics now, but we aim to tackle this problem and tackle it hard.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you guys jumping on, sharing some information about Moak and kind of autonomous exploitation more broadly. I know I'll be keeping an eye on what you guys are up to, and I know many others will as well. So thank you guys for jumping on and chatting with me today.
Thank you, Chris. We've been following you for a long time, and this was like a very honorable thing for us to be here. So thanks.
I appreciate that. That's awesome. Have a good evening, guys.
Thanks, Chris.